Good evening, everybody. Ooh, sorry.
Alex, are you picking up that echo?
Sorry. Big time. Sorry about that, folks. I'll be a little further back here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 6th regular meeting of the Oyster River Cooperative School Board. Our first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Heather? A second? And Matt. All in favor? 7 in favor, and the student rep in favor. Public comments. Are there any public comments this evening? No? Okay. Announcements. Oh, no, excuse me. Approval of the minutes. We have two meeting minutes, sets of meeting minutes to approve. We have our November 15th and also our November 29th. Perhaps we can start with November 15th. Have a motion to approve the November 15th minutes. Heather? Second? Matt? Are there any corrections? Heather?
On page 2, under the Superintendent Search Committee, it says she thanked all the members of the Superintendent Search Committee. That should be corrected to Superintendent Screening Committee. And I've already given that to Karen.
Any other corrections? Okay. All in favor? And we have 7 in favor and the student rep in favor. Now moving on to November 29th. Can I have a motion to approve November 29th? Heather, and second, Gianna. Any corrections to the November 29th minutes? Yes, Heather.
On page 2, where it says Amy and Heather calculated figures, it should just say Amy calculated figures because Amy did all the work.
Okay, Gianna?
Also on page 2, rather than HPAC, it should say HVAC system.
Oh, okay. Under your comments.
Yes.
Yep, okay. Any other corrections? Okay, with those corrections, all in favor? 7 in favor, the student rep in favor. And now we are up to announcements, commendations, and comments from the district, which we haven't had for quite some time.
Good evening, Misty Lowe from Massway. I'm going to be sharing a few things, not just for Massway, but also for my colleague, Principal Goldsmith, who's at a concert as we speak with Moherman Elementary School. So what I'm sharing is really in line with both elementary schools. We had a fantastic Coding and Cocoa today at our schools. Both of our tech integrators, I'm sure as other folks at the other buildings, phenomenal job, a ton of work. I'd like to do a public thank you to Susan Langford for Massway and Sarah Curtin from Moherman for the amount of work that they did to bring in special visitors, create a Coding and Cocoa, fun activities for our students. It was fun. Our buildings were full of volunteers, folks from the shipyard, Mobius Mobility, TurboCam, and much more. It was a really fantastic day. Massway has our winter concert December 13th at 6:30 p.m. at the middle school concert hall, so I just wanted to share that date. And Oyster River Middle School is going to be traveling to Massway and Moherman on December 21st to do a special musical performance for our students for the holidays, so we look forward to that. And again, I just want to remind folks publicly that December 22nd is an early release day. For the elementary schools, we'll be dismissing at 12:35, and lunches will be provided. So just to make sure parents recognize their children are certainly welcome to still eat breakfast and lunch at school, regardless of the early release day. Questions for me? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Bill Sullivan, Oyster River Middle School. I'm going to jump on what Misty talked about with Cocoa and Coding today. It was amazing in our school. And Janet Martell deserves a big shout out for all the work that she's done with getting that all organized. And every student we talked to today at lunch, or even leaving the school, had a great time learning to code, getting a chance to code, and then I think they like the hot chocolate as well. Our winter concerts. So we've got 3 winter concerts coming up over the next 2 weeks. We've got the orchestra concert, which is actually grades 6 through 12, and that will be on December 12th, and that starts at 6 p.m. We have our band concert, which is 6 through 8, which will be December 14th at 6 p.m. And we have our chorus concert, grades 6 through 8 on the 18th of December, and that'll be at 6 p.m. as well. We're going to have a 5th and 6th grade social this week, which kids are really excited about. We haven't had any socials for our younger grades. We had a dance earlier this year for 7 and 8, but now the 5th and 6th graders get to stay on a Friday night and hang out for a little while. We'll have some music, have a movie going, and just have kids back and have a fun evening. So they're looking forward to that. That'll be from 5:30 to 7:30. We've got our sports programs underway. Basketball's going strong, 3 or 4 home games already. The kids are playing great. We've got a ton of clubs going on after schools. That's always exciting after school to see all the kids that stick around. And our nurses are working with our school community and kids and families that need some needs. So they're working with our staff, helping out families in need. And I think that's all. Any questions? Yes?
Can you elaborate on what clubs have been meeting? Just to share.
Yeah, as I walk around, I see our guitar club's been started up. We've got Destination Imagination. We've got our chess club going. I think we've still got our vintage video game clubs are going on. Math Counts is going on, just to name a few right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
It doesn't tell me.
Good evening, Rebecca Noe, Oyster River High School. So Maeve is actually going to talk about quite a few dates. So we sat down earlier and a lot of information over the past few weeks and coming up, so we split those. But I do want to give a shout out to Celeste Best, who was our digital learning specialist who helped organize our Coding and Cocoa, but Maeve's going to talk about that in detail a little bit later. Also, a few weeks ago, we had Arsenic and Old Lace, and so I always wanted to say what an amazing job the cast and crew did, and Alex Eustace, the director, so just a huge congratulations to them and the amazing job. It was really funny and fun to watch. On December 1st, we had our Grading and Reporting Committee attend the second day of a workshop, which was Grading for Equity and Learning. And so it was really fun for me to be able to go with about 10 teachers and Shannon Karen, who is our Director of Counseling, and go and learn really competencies, grading, learning, equity, research-based and evidence-based, and how you put that in the classroom. And so those 10 teachers will meet with our Grading and Reporting Committee and discuss how we can take that further. Really exciting news, 2 of our runners, so Haley Kavanaugh was the only female runner from New Hampshire to qualify and run in the Nike Cross Country Nationals this past weekend. She did an amazing job, so we're very proud of her. And then Mackenzie Cook ran at Boston University this weekend and ran a national qualifying time in the 3,000. And so just 2 very talented runners that we have. Some dates. So our Senate food drive is going on through December 20th. So if parents want to have kids bring food into their advisories, that's where we're collecting food for the food drive. On 12/15, we have Chaos and Kindness coming to the high school. They'll be doing 2 shows, and their message is about positivity and inclusiveness, and we'll have an activity and advisory on inclusiveness. 12:22, as was mentioned earlier, is early release for the high school. That's at 12:10 in the afternoon. And then just to make sure, I know the dates for vacation sometimes that everyone knows, January 2nd is our day back in school. So I just want to make sure parents heard that the 2nd we are back in the building and back in school. Any questions for me?
Yeah, Chaos and Kindness
Yes.
date again?
12:15.
Thank you.
So we're running a different schedule that day, same hours for school, but a slightly different schedule for the kids. And so we'll have, if I remember correctly, 9th and 11th, we'll watch one show, while sophomores and seniors are in advisory, and then they switch. Okay. Thank you.
Ooh. Ow. Shocked again. Lisa Happy Transportation. I just wanted to let everyone know that the Transportation Department is having food drives next week on the 12th, 13th, and 14th at the middle school just before the concerts begin, and we are taking food donations and monetary donations, and it will all go toward the Oyster River and 68 hours of hunger. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay. Board announcements, commendations, and comments. I'm going to start by saying I have some big thank yous for everyone who was involved in any way in our superintendent search. I want to thank everyone who took the time to complete a survey. We had close to 200 surveys for each of our 3 candidates. So it was a lot of surveys, and I read every single one of them. So big thank you to everyone who took the time to do that. I know Heather thanked them, but I want to thank again the screening committee. I had said search committee a couple weeks ago, and I meant screening committee for their time and effort for interviewing, for selecting and then interviewing the candidates and selecting the finalists, and they did an awesome job, so thank you to them. I want to thank our 3 finalists for their willingness to serve in our district. They did an amazing job, and it was a very long day, and I really want to thank them for coming out. And last but not least, I want to say thank you to our board superintendent search committee, which is Brian Cisneros, Tom Newkert, and Heather Smith, who did just an incredible job, all 3 of them, but particularly Heather, the number of hours, I can't even imagine how many hours that she spent on this. A lot of work, but, just a fantastic job. So, and we will be meeting in non-public later tonight, so we'll see where we go. And then the other thing that I just wanted to say a big thank you about, or just to point out, is the Mouth of the River, as always. Their first issue came out. It's amazing. Anybody can subscribe to it. So if anyone would like to do that, they can contact Sean Kelly, who is a teacher here at the high school. And it really is a very informative, well-written news magazine. All right, other board comments? Now that I got mine done. Heather.
So I went to the mental health panel at the high school, and I thought it was really fantastic. I wasn't able to stay the entire time, but it was really great. And there were 2 things that kind of stuck with me. One is a parent, and then, well, both of them mostly as parents. There was a bit of a conversation about parent anxiety about treatment for their children, and this idea that, can you be done with that yet? And this fear that, is it going to get worse, or is it being treated correctly, and how we propagate that fear onto our children who are having these struggles already. And I thought that was a really interesting concept that I was thinking about, and I think it's something we should be thinking about, because this, it's a continuum. There is not necessarily a done. And so to that point, one of the other things that the panel sort of talked about to the students in the audience is helping get parents to the table, bringing parents to the table, getting them to understand what this is and what the needs are. And that's a lot of work for us to be putting on our kids, to try to get them to explain it to us so that we can be in a place that we're supporting them. And so I think the next time one of these things happen, we should try to get as many parents as we can to these things so they are listening to the same things the kids are hearing. So make the invitation maybe a bit more explicit, that it's not just a student panel, but it's for everybody. Parents should come with their kids. Maybe we don't sit together because we're not cool, but we should all be in the room. We should all be hearing the things, and it's so important. Officer Mike Nicolosi was talking about the sheer volume of intervention calls the Durham Police Department, UNH Police Department, that whole group has gotten over the past year, how it has just skyrocketed. And there was just so much information and good conversation, and the panelists, especially the students, were so brave in opening up about what their struggles were and how they had gotten treatment and how they were advocating for others. It was just really wonderful, and I hope the next time something like this comes around that more adults are able to attend, particularly with their students. And then the other one I went to was the hate speech forum, which I also thought was really good. And I'm really interested to see what no, we will have to fill it in because I didn't look it up quick enough. There's another parent-only workshop or forum that's going to be happening in February that I'm really looking forward to attending. So overall, there's been some really great stuff happening at the high school, and I encourage folks, if you are able and you see them in the emails or on Parent Square, make an effort to attend because there's some really great things happening.
Thank you. Gianna?
I attended both of those as well, and I don't have to say much because Heather mostly covered it, but one of the things I'd really like to say is that to make sure they're very well advertised, not just outside of the high schools, but down lower. I think the hate speech forum in particular would have been helpful to have gone down, better advertised down to younger grades as well, because that kind of thing starts happening very early. So I'd like to see greater advertisement on those to get to more of the parents there and as people feel comfortable with their children as well, because I thought they were excellent discussions.
Other board comments? Okay. Assistant Superintendent?
Good evening. I just wanted to follow up on what Heather said about the February presentation. That's going to be February 1st, and we will be publicizing it to all of our grade levels in the community, as well as publicizing it at other school districts. So Dover, Portsmouth, Exeter, Somersworth, Barrington, we're going to push it out to get as many people as we possibly can. And that's the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force that's going to be coming and talking, and that's a parent-only forum to talk about social media and internet crimes, talk about how parents can protect, learn about how kids are accessing information and who's accessing their children and how to protect their children. And then they'll also explain what their role is and what they do. So that will be on February 1st, and it will be at 6 o'clock, and it will run for about 90 minutes. It'll be about a 60-minute presentation, and then time at the end for questions that people may have and conversation. And we will definitely be sending information out. I met with Jen about that already, and she's working on getting a flyer together so that we can promote it.
Excuse me, Suzanne.
Sure.
Where is it going to be?
It's going to be at the middle school music hall.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that we've solidified, which we're really excited about, is Mirko Chardon, who is going to be visiting the faculty in May on the May Teacher Workshop Day. He is an author, and he wrote the book Equity by Design. He also is the Chief Equity Officer and Inclusion Officer for Novak Education. His work really revolves around all areas of the school, but universal design for learning with restorative practices and diversity and inclusion in mind. So we're really excited to have him. I've been working with Rachel and Catherine on this, and he will be coming and spending the day with us in May. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Superintendent's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to note that the hate speech event, I think that Heather and Gianna hit the highlights. I do want to thank the presenters. It's really great to be able to speak to the community and have diverse perspectives. So Rachel, our DEIJ coordinator, Mike Nicolosi, our SRO, our principal, Rebecca, and Suzanne in her assistant superintendent role, talking about curriculum. It really was a great event, and I agree with both Heather and Gianna. Trying to get parents out is hard work, and we'll continue to try to do that. There have been a lot of presentations by the students and by the staff this school year, and attendance has been modest at best. And somehow we need to be able to let parents know that these things are going on and that they're welcome, and we encourage their attendance. But to be able to have people like Rachel and Mike and Principal Noe and Suzanne and doing that presentation with me really made it interesting, first of all, because each of us took a different perspective. I really would emphasize Mike Nicolosi being part of it as our school resource officer. There's often some misunderstanding about what an SRO does. I think that the community that was present saw an SRO that was committed to our students and their safety, and his presentation will feed very nicely into the presentation on safety, internet safety coming up. And just thank you to them for being there with me, and thank you to the parents and community members, because there were some people who aren't parents who were present, who took the time to come and express their concerns and their support for the work of the district. I just wanted to give you some additional information in relation to the board's work in relation to the budget. So at the last meeting, you confirmed that the budget that you're going to recommend to the community will be 4.2%. And the reason I wanted to restate that is because later we talk about a default budget and so forth, and it's just good for the community, since we weren't being recorded that night, to have a sense of where we were in the budget process. So for the community information, we faced a 15.1% increase in our health insurance that approached $1 million. And would say on average, you'd see health insurance increases over the years of between 3% and 6%. Sometimes it reached double digits. One time it reached this level in the past, but a 15.1% increase is a pretty dramatic obstacle for the board to overcome, and compounded by negotiated agreements and utility costs that went up substantially. And so the board did a really, I thought, a really great job of grasping the obstacles that we faced this year and concluding with a 4.2% increase, I think is really a sign of the times. I talked to area superintendents, and many of them, of course, are having the same struggles. And so our increase is actually pretty complementary to what's happening in the region, so we're not an outlier at all. The other piece of information is one that Tom asked me for, because I think it also feeds into a later discussion. I just wanted to point it out in your packet. Tom asked me if I would gather the information on the Barrington student enrollment since we negotiated the agreement, and what kind of revenue that has generated. That's in your packet as well. So in 2012, we had 61 students from Barrington, and the tuition rate was $12,500, and it generated $762,500. Carry it to this past school year, not the current one, and we had 179 students, and the tuition rate at that point was $19,230, and it generated revenue of $3,442,170. So you can see there's been like a five-fold increase in revenue. And, I think it's also important, and I'll reiterate this when we talk about it later, as to why we entered into this agreement in the first place. And, for Tom and Al and myself, we saw a high school that if we had no new enrollment coming in would have had to experience a loss of staff and a loss of programming. So the Barrington agreement was the result of us reaching out to Newmarket as well as Barrington, and New Durham actually entered into the discussion briefly, but ultimately Barrington was the community we decided to work with, and largely because they were the most interested in working with us. And Tom and Al and I spent many hours talking to various communities, but ultimately began focusing in on Barrington. The relationship with the town of Barrington has been nothing but positive for our high school. If we go back to that time when we were worried about staff reductions and as a result, program reductions, what we were hoping to achieve by having the Barrington tuition was to not just stabilize our enrollment and our offerings, but improve upon them. And we've done that. So, in the course of 8 years, not only have we added to the core curriculum, but we also have added the LIDAC position and the fourth counselor and the ELO position and so forth. And you'd say, well, those aren't directly related to Barrington, but if we didn't have this income, I'm not sure we could have had that discussion. So later in the agenda, I'll talk some more about Barrington, but I just wanted to bring that back around since I had a moment to do so. And so that's where we stand at this point, and we'll talk some more a little bit later in the agenda. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you. And also, I understand you'll be doing business administrator report tonight?
I will be doing the business administrator report tonight because unfortunately Amy is out and for illness. So does that mean I'm up now?
Yes. Yes, you are up.
I'm up now. Okay. Well, the goal of tonight is also stated in the agenda. The default budget will be $318,732 less than the 4.2% budget you approved. The issues that would lower your budget to the community are those salaries that are not part of a negotiated agreement. So non-bargaining groups, there's about probably, give or take 100 people in the district who are not part of a union. The central office, the maintenance, the technology, the bus drivers, all are no longer part of a bargaining group. Administration, we treat administration and we treat the bus drivers as if they are part of a bargaining unit, meaning we sit and negotiate with them. But technically, by statute, those salary increases would not be part of a budget if our budget fails. The negotiated tutor salary, of course, that'll be voted on in March. So as Tom has said in the past, and we've had this conversation, it's a relatively modest number. It's relatively modest because we didn't have a lot new in the budget. So by definition, a default budget is you take away things that weren't part of the current budget or aren't part of a negotiated agreement. So that's where we are on the default budget. That would be my business hat tonight.
Okay, should we go forward then and do a motion to approve the fiscal '25 default budget at this time?
We could, or you could wait till December 20th where we have it in the format that is presented by expected by the state.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give you the
Okay.
preview. We'll get the formal vote at the next meeting.
Okay. Then next is student rep, Maeve.
Alrighty. Well, some of my thunder was stolen with all these dates and events, so I
Were
want
you going to do the default budget?
yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. So yes, we had the mental health panel and the fall play, both incredibly successful. And then Cody and Coco was yesterday, and as Ms. Noita said, Celeste Best did a great job. We probably didn't need as much help as some of the elementary schoolers. I think we got the hang of it pretty quick. But another upcoming event is the blood drive, the 11th. And then concerts, I know Mr. Sullivan said those. And Chaos and Kindness coming to high school the 15th is a big event. They're going to promote inclusivity, and that's the theme of it. And then 22nd is an early release, so that's what I have.
Thank you.
Is that blood drive all day?
Question. It is, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So nothing for Finance Committee, I assume, Brian? Okay. Nothing. Did you want to say anything, Heather, about superintendent search? I probably said
Just
some of
super
you
quick,
could,
because Denise said most everything. We had 443 total responses to the survey pulled up between all three candidates. And so I want to reiterate Denise's thanks to everyone who took time to either review the material online, who took time to come to one of the forums, who took the time to sit down and fill out the online form. All 443 got read, and then the paper ones from the high school students also got read. So we really appreciate it. And then I'm going to throw a special shout out to the middle school students who sat in a big circle and firing lined each and every one of the candidates. All three of them said that was the hardest interview of the entire day with those middle schoolers, because they started off with softballs, like, we're going to have a snow day, and then they ramped it up. So the middle school firing line by far was the highlight of all of the candidates' visits, and so great job to our middle schoolers. That is all I have to say about that.
Gianna?
I should have added this one earlier, but this one thing is kind of reiterating what both Heather and Denise said, is that, thanking everybody who took the time to go to those meetings and to go to the forums and to answer the surveys. But that tied into the mental health forum and the hate speech forum, to me, just has really driven home the invaluable collective wisdom of our community. And I've learned so much from people in so many ways and benefited from points of view that I wouldn't otherwise have seen or thought of. And I just want to thank everybody for doing that and to ask them to continue to do it. That to please reach out to the school board, reach out to the administrators, and share your thoughts. It's how we function, it's how we know what's going on, it's how we know what you think, it's how we know what you want. And the fact that I saw a lot of that recently has been fantastic, and I just want to encourage it to keep going. That's it.
Thank you. Unanimous consent, we actually have none tonight. So we do? Huh?
No, I said cha-ching, sorry.
Oh, I was like, did I miss something? Okay. So for our discussion, we have our 2024-2025 school calendar for first review. Dr. Morse, did you want to speak to it?
I'd actually have Suzanne speak to the calendar. Thank you.
So we conferred with area schools and drafted a calendar together. We are sharing holidays this year. I know in the past there have been some years where we haven't shared vacation times. Vacations are shared. And the majority of our teacher workshop days are. There's some variation at the beginning of the year. For Dover, for instance, they're going to have 4 teacher workshop days at the start of their school year, and we are not. We will have our traditional 2. So that will really won't affect our CTE students, because our CTE students usually don't start the first week of school anyways. There's usually a delay. So we're not concerned about those conflicting days. But after working with the districts, there really are a small number of conflicting days. So Rochester and Dover, there's going to be 2. And then for Somersworth, there's 8. I don't know if anyone has any questions for me about the calendar. I'm happy to answer them.
Just to add to it, Suzanne, the state is requiring districts to have no more than 10 days out of alignment when you're working with a CTE center. The assumption is you're working with one CTE center. Our school system works with 3, and so we focus largely on coordinating with Dover, because the vast majority of our CTE kids go to Dover. And so having only 2 days out of alignment with Dover is really nothing short of a miracle, and we're really pleased with that. The Somersworth and Rochester programs become more satellite programs. They offer some programming that Dover doesn't, and all 3 programs together offer our children a vast variety of programming that otherwise they wouldn't get because we are not a center. So I wanted to thank the area superintendents who worked with us to try to make sense of a very difficult obstacle for Oyster River.
There's a lot of collaboration that happens between schools, even with your recent vote of shift for the January teacher workshop day. Other districts, they're doing the same thing. They're moving it to accommodate for the presidential election. And so there's a lot of collaboration that happens between the districts.
A student that is, because we have most of the days conflict with Somersworth. If we have a student that is going to Somersworth, we happen to be off that day, but they are not. Can the student still go to class? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Heather?
Because I never remember, is this, this is New Hampshire Vacation Week in February?
Yes, it is. Gianna?
There's two things on the calendar. One is that I saw that we're actually relatively lucky this year, just by the way things landed, that there's a fair number of religious holidays that hit teacher workshops and weekends, which is fortuitous for a lot of folks. It doesn't hit all of them, but it was actually nice to see that happened, because I think that's something we could always try and aim at, trying to make sure it happened. Some of it just might have been luck. But the other thing is that this is something I just kind of wanted to toss out there for future discussion for setting a calendar, is wondering when we could talk to the communities next time about possibly, I know this would be, moving the calendar up 1 week. Because if we did that, then it would mean that snow days typically would land prior to June 19th. So they'd land before Juneteenth, which I think would be a great thing we could possibly do, because it would mean that you wouldn't be having essentially a 3-day weekend right at the end of the school year, which I think is hard to deal with. But obviously, that's going to require discussing with all these other school districts. But I wanted to bring it up now so we have a chance to possibly make sure we have that kind of discussion with those other school districts to see if they'd be interested in negotiating that as well.
And are you speaking of shifting it earlier, so we would start earlier in August?
I think so, because
Okay.
if you've shifted it later, I mean, everybody gets kind of fried by then, but
Yeah.
shifting it earlier, I think might be beneficial.
We can definitely talk about that. I know a lot of contracts for teachers have
That'd be the
that
thing.
negotiated into it, the start date, so that would also be part of the conversation, but we can definitely talk to area schools about that.
And that was one of the reasons I brought it up,
Our contract is
too.
more advisory, and Rochester and Somersworth and Dover, teacher contracts are much more explicit about when they can start, when they can't start. So that's part of the negotiation process. So we can raise it and see whether your suggestion flies in the face of their CBA, and if it doesn't, then I'm sure they'll be willing to talk.
Right, I just thought so we could start that conversation.
Absolutely.
There's also been a lot of push to actually push the schedule back to past Labor Day.
Wait, push
Going
back
the
to
other
to
way.
push it
Going the
the
other
other
way.
And then
Yeah.
we would just have like a later end date.
Right, or we go by hours or whatever we end up doing, like we do every year. We look at the hours versus the days.
The conversation, what Brian's referring to, Gianna, is the conversation at the governor's level, as a matter of fact, at commissioner's level, was to try to push schools to start after Labor Day as opposed to earlier. It didn't get any traction in the legislature, but it is a conversation that continues to happen in Concord.
That's actually an interesting one, because most of my family does not live here, and since everybody else starts later, we often don't see them during the summer because they begin almost a month earlier. So that wouldn't be awesome for me.
Yeah,
But,
that was a
it
big,
just- if
big
there's lots of different
conversation
things.
in the last legislative session. It looked like it was going to get traction, and it took all of the professional organizations to go to the legislature and say, this isn't a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, so we're going to hold off on approving the default budget for our December 20th meeting. Draft of the warrant articles? Did we? I don't believe we got those. Oh, they always squeeze something extra in. Let me check. Yeah, it must have come after our initial packet.
No, it was part of the original.
Oh, okay.
So again, these are drafts. These have been vetted through our attorney, and ultimately, they have to be approved by the Department of Revenue. And the conversation that we've been having since we've all worked together is, why did these doggone articles have to be so convoluted and so nonsense worded? And they are convoluted and nonsensical because it's legally required to be stated in this fashion. So even though we all like to say, but can we put this in normal English? The place where you can do it is in the note section, which we've done historically. You want to give an explanation of the verbiage of the legal language that we're required to do. We can do a paragraph underneath explaining what the articles are. So we have more than normal number of articles this year coming up, and it's largely because we wanted to invest in the future. So the first article is always the choosing of a moderator. The second article is to choose 3 school board members. That's because there are potentially 3 people, well, there are 3 people up for election. And so during the March vote, candidates will be running and somebody will be elected to replace the outgoing board members. Article 3 is our normal budget article. It's the all-consuming article. Basically, it takes all the pieces of the budget, the operating budget, the grant sections and so forth, and accumulates it into a recommendation to the community. Article 4 is going to be the article that relates to our bargaining agreement with the tutors. So that's got to be approved by the voters for the 3-year duration, or hopefully will be approved by the voters. Article 5 is an article that the community has seen many times over the years in relation to us putting $125,000 aside from our fund balance, not from new taxes, so the school board will be in a position to purchase the solar array. And then Article 6 would be a required vote of the community to extend the Barrington Agreement for an additional 10 years. And then Article 7 is a capital improvement article for the turf field. And Article 8 is so that we can grab onto any revenue that we bring into the district from rentals and put it aside to help pay for the replacement of the turf field. So there have been times when we've had as few as 3, 4 articles, and this particular year we needed to get those unique ones, 7 and 8, into the process of the voters approving it so we could start in the process of making sure that we can afford without crippling our taxpayers the replacement of the turf fields.
Okay.
So that's a quick summary on them. Brian, did you want to correct me?
No, I'm not correcting you. Just, Article 4, because Article 4 is a CBA.
Yes.
There really should be, Article 5 should be the boilerplate language from the DRA that states that if this does not pass, we can actually go back, renegotiate, and bring it in front of the voters for the next fiscal year, too.
Yeah, so that's, there should be in Article 5 about, say it again?
It allows you to bring, if the article fails, it allows you to bring it back and vote again before the fiscal year starts.
All right, I'll look into that. Thank you, Brian.
And also, you probably, I know you put these in order of importance, but Article 6 really is not a financial one in the sense that we're putting money aside for it. So that should probably be, the Barrington Agreement should probably be last.
Last, okay.
Yeah, and the rest should be before that, because we put those in order of, if we have the funds, that's the order they get paid in.
Yep, great, thank you. Any other thoughts or?
Yeah.
Tom?
In previous conversations, you talked about the Barrington wanted to increase, or at least have the possibility of increasing the number to, say, 55 students. Now, I guess personally, I'd like to see the agreement, the new agreement.
Sure.
We should see it, I think. And is the language loose enough so we don't need to change the language for them to go up to 55, or is that going to be part of that? And then would there be a possibility of them going above 55 if that's mutually agreeable to the board? I'm just curious, in just terms of how that flexibility is built into the
Thanks,
the
Tom.
agreement.
I think that's a really, Deanna, the superintendent, Deanna Ray, and myself are working under the concept that both boards are supportive of the extension of the Barrington Agreement. Tom has raised the issue about increasing the ceiling, because currently the ceiling is 200 students. As you can see from the report I gave you earlier, we're at 179 students. We haven't really ever got 200 students. However, if you think about this in terms of the current middle school, yes, Bill, we're talking about you. And the decrease in students that happened this particular year in grade 5 will happen in grade 6, will happen in grade 7, will happen in grade 8. So that decrease in students is going to hit grade 9. and then 10, 11, and 12. So what's going to happen over the next decade is that the middle school and high school will settle back into lower numbers, we'll say 100, 120 kids overall. Does that allow for more room for Barrington children if they choose to come here? And so, my concept on this is, I think the answer is yes, but the room won't be there in the first 5 years of the agreement because the high school is not going to have been impacted by the decrease in the enrollment at the middle school. The second 5 years, they will be impacted by the decrease in enrollment, and it makes sense to me that we would create flexibility in the second 5 years that the town of Barrington could send more of their students to Oyster River if they choose to come, which serves our purpose as well as their purpose. So I will flex out that language and have that for the board on the 20th to look at. But there's definitely room at the end when we hit the second half of the renewed agreement to bring in more Barrington students. And that serves, again, it's the same reason that it served us 10 years ago, it'll serve us in 5 years, maintaining the quality program we have and offsetting tax effort for our communities.
Oh, sorry.
Just follow up, so that perhaps after the, assuming they reach maybe 220, if there was a year that they might want to say, we have, we're just dying to get into Oyster River, we want to have like 50, 60 students in, would there be like a year-by-year kind of mutual agreement that they could go above that 55?
So that's an approach I could take when I'm talking to Deanna. My initial approach was, relatively status quo for the first 5 years, and then increase the ceiling from 200 to, say, 300 or some number there around. But I could do it each year, too.
Well,
It works either way. I think
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is create the flexibility for Barrington to increase their enrollment as we are becoming smaller.
That's great, that's great.
And there's like 100 different ways you can do it, but conceptually, that's what I'm working from. And I've sent my concepts to Rebecca and Suzanne and to Deanna Day to see whether they fly. So.
Question.
But as far, go ahead, Brian.
So right now, since we're at 179, if a parent or a family moves into Barrington and they want to send their kids to Oyster River next week, is that, because we're under that number, is that allowable?
Yeah, it happens every year. So somebody moves into Barrington, and they, of course, have choice in the high schools. The superintendent reaches out to me first and says, what do you think? This family would like their child to go to the high school. They may not be freshmen. They may be a sophomore, junior, or senior. I always contact Rebecca and say, hey, we have this family. And when it's happening mid-year like that, one of the things that I like to do, and Suzanne did it and Becker does it with me, is we interview the family, because it's not part of the enrollment process, and so we have been incredibly flexible. The times that we have said no are rare, and it could be because that particular class is full and we couldn't even take another child if we wanted to, unless they happen to move into the district. But I would say 95% of the time we're saying yes, because the family's new to the community and they didn't have the option in their freshman year of asking to come, and it works out really well for everybody involved. So it's very rare that we would say no, but we'd have to have a pretty compelling reason. Special services is a good example also. Catherine and Nancy have a limited staff at the high school, and if there's an incredibly needy kid who moves into Barrington and we don't have the capacity, we can't service that child at that point in time. So then Catherine becomes involved in that conversation. But I would say 90% of the time when it's a special needs child who moves in 9 through 12, we're saying yes. It's just those rare exceptions where our particular program is bursting at the seams and one more child isn't really possible.
I just wanted to check, so as far as the language in the warrant, though, it doesn't specify number of students or any of that, so the language in the warrant is fine. and
Yes,
we have
language in the
yeah.
warrant is fine. It's just a matter of working through these concepts that Tom and Brian had raised.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. A list of policies for first read. Dan?
Yes. So in front of us tonight, acknowledging that we've done more than our usual amount of reading recently. For first read, Policy Committee has reviewed Policy JJIF, Athletic Policy Sanctioning of Sports, JLCE, Emergency Care and First Aid, and ACN, Lactation Accommodations. So again, this is the first of two reads, opportunity to ask questions. The changes range from, for first read, they have to be substantive changes, but they range from relatively minor to really extensive. Why don't I just open it up for questions, anything we can explain? Tom?
You crossed out the parentheses for level 2 sports. Could you say, why that was done? I'm just curious.
Sure. And guys, check my memory on these. I think the thinking there was to be being less specific created more flexibility for the policy to function.
Yeah. Okay. So the board could decide down the road that they might want to support that. And so you're not locking into policy that they're not supporting, down the road, if you want to support ice hockey facilities, they could do it without having this be locked into policy.
Precisely, and sort of, to be prepared for the variability and costs so that, Andy can, without asking us to modify the policy, adapt to any changes in that marketplace.
Good idea.
Others? So I will make a motion to approve policies JJIF, JLCE, and ACN for first read.
I'll move.
I second. I can repeat that.
That was Dan and Gianna, right?
Dan and Gianna. I think I'm half asleep tonight. All that reading. All right, all in favor? 7 in favor, and the student rep is in favor. Okay. School board committee updates. Do we have any committee updates today? Heather?
Sustainability is meeting next Monday. The end.
Any other committees? Okay.
Let's see, DEIJ.
Gianna, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't put my hand up in a very clear way. DEIJ met 11:20. The majority of the discussion was kind of in preparation to and discussing of the hate speech forum and the events at the high school regarding the graffiti. Like always, it was a valuable discussion. And definitely there were some ideas that were broached to improve some of the situation and how to talk to students to make sure that they conceptually understand the meaning and the impact of hate speech and its historicity, which it turns out probably a lot of students don't get. Rachel discussed some things she had done in the classroom regarding that. And also the continuing discussion was more along the lines of what we are planning to do in, I believe, March for a public forum. It has shifted a little bit of what our initial plans were, considering some of the things that have happened in the district, but I'll let you know what they are as soon as we nail it down, which should happen in the next meeting.
Thank you. Any other committees, Tom?
The three of us that were on the middle school survey committee met and went through the previous survey, picking questions we thought would work and eliminating ones we thought were not part of the charge, and I think made pretty good headway in terms of, deciding some of the questions that would go on the final survey. So we have 2 more meetings, and I think if we move at the pace we're moving, we should get it done in those 2 meetings.
And if I could just add to that, I did talk to the UNH Survey Center, and they said when we're ready, they were more than willing to activate the survey for us. It'll be a web-based survey as opposed to paper-based. And Andy was more than thrilled to be able to support us.
Good, good.
Okay, great.
Last one, Policy Committee
yes.
meets on December 14th.
Okay. All right, public comments. I do see no members of the public here. So our closing actions, we have December 20th as our regular meeting, January 3rd, then our public budget hearing is on January 10th, followed by the 17th of January regular meeting.
And the only thing I would add there, Denise, is I'll start scheduling the town meetings that I do, and I'll make sure the board knows when they're happening so that you can add them to your schedule if you want to attend.
Okay. All right, so we now need to go into non-public. So I'm going to make a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2B, the hiring of any person as a public employee. Is there a second? Heather? This is a roll call vote. Tom, you want to start?
Tom Newkirk, aye.
Brian Cisneros, yes.
Dan Klein, yes.
Denise Day, yes.
Matt Bacon, yes.
Heather Smith, yes.
John Jelsey, yes.
And so we are going into non-public. Thank you, everybody. And we will, when we come back out.
Rebecca.